And Jeff, everything's frozen on my end.
Is it frozen? It's not frozen here. I think, yeah,
Jeff?
I'm good. I can hear you.
Rachel, I think we've lost Jeff.
You haven't. You haven't. You just can't. Welcome to episode 6 of Star Wipes. I am Jeff Greenberg. I am the lead mod over at Our Editors, and that's what this is. This is a discussion of the last, 2 weeks of Our Editors. With me, hopefully as always, is my friend Michael Kammes. Hello, Michael.
Heidi ho, Jeff. How are you?
I'm Heidi hoing. I don't know. I don't know that I'm necessarily comfortable with saying Heidi ho, but Heidi ho right back to you. I think every time you should do one of those. Like the shirt, man. Like the shirt.
Thank you. I'm not sure how current the title is, but as a proud member of BCPC, Blue Collar Post Collective, there's been, obviously there's news with them all the time, but right now is when they're doing their annual rate kind of open call to submit your rates, what you do, how much you make, and then that's kind of anonymized, and those details are then shared, so everyone kind of has an idea of what people in this area and who identify as this and that, what they're making, and it helps you kind of know what's out there in the world. So I wanted to remind everyone to check out BCPC, to check out the annual rate survey, and to submit, because this can only help other folks in the industry see what they're worth, at least financially.
That's bit.ly/2022 rate survey. And, you know, Michael, one of the things that I'm thrilled to see happening out in California, and I really would like to see it across the nation, is transparency for job hiring. I mean, that's part of why this exists, is because of the, particularly around freelance, just the dearth, the lack of really good, solid information for somebody. And I asked the question in that thread specifically, or I had somebody ask the question about, are they open sourcing the data? Because you might want to just look into your market. And I didn't look at them for last year, but I might want to look at the market for just Philadelphia or New York so I could get a better analysis of what's going on. But the BCPC folks have changed the industry for just in just awesome ways. And this is one of the great, thanks, Katie.
Katie Hinsen is fantastic. Katie's over at Disney Marvel now, and I'm actually doing a podcast with her because I have nothing but free time apparently. But she's fantastic. If you're looking for someone else to follow in the industry as a, pardon the expression, thought leader, it's amazing talking with her because her outlooks on things are just phenomenal. So I highly recommend looking Katie up, and of course filling out the rate survey.
Outstanding. And with that, let's get started into long forms. In fact, let's mention it again, just for those of you who are new. We do 2 or so threads. We break them apart in a long form style. We then go through I think I got about 10 or so short form style. We wrap it up with a little bit of FMK. I gave Michael a nice surprise with the idea for it. And that's the episode. It's well chaptered, allowing you to jump between topics. And in the YouTube feed, it also includes direct links to each of the Reddit threads. So if you want to go and read and engage, you can go back to these topics. And with that, we're going to go ahead here and start up into long forms. Okay, Michael. And I'm waiting for there we go. We start off with WIP, How to Keep Your Editor Happy by Line Papers. Now, it's a long post, so I'm going to do a quick little bit of summary here. Hey all, I've recently joined a company that handles its own productions, and it's, amateur. I'm the lead editor. I want to create some protocols, how to format drives, sound time code, sound engineers to name files. For B-roll, hold shots longer. What advice do you have that could help me with this group? I got to tell you, I love this question. You know, Michael, one of the, my running jokes about life is I end up cursing whoever the DP or the director was, and I kept finding my name was that guy, and cringing when I found that. The first one that they start with, and I just love that this is here, is room tone. by Persona 1138 THX 1138. Persona 1138. And I'll say to you, I've somewhere early in my career was taught to not get room tone twice, at the front and at the back, just in case. To get it right away before anybody's prepared, and at the very end while all the bodies are definitely there. And I think this has an obligatory mention to Living in Oblivion. Have you seen Living in Oblivion?
Not in years.
Yeah, it's Buscemi. It's the ultimate film school nerds film school film.
Speaking of, just deviate just for a second.
Yeah.
You mentioned a great, during the pre-show, we were talking about this, and you had mentioned a great little trick about room tone.
Oh, my room tone trick.
Yes.
I picked this up at an editor's retreat. I run something called the editor's retreat. We haven't done it in about 4 years. You've been to a couple editor's retreats, Michael. I switched to the wrong camera. I don't care. We'll get the right one eventually. But the trick that somebody taught me, and he was a sound mixer, was to, when you don't have room tone, grab that 1 second, that 2 second you do have. And instead of you trying to fade it or dissolve it into itself, reverse it. It'll butt up perfectly. It'll be twice the length. And it just sounds better when you are desperate. And it was one of those ones, it's my favorite sort of concept, Michael. Finding out something so glaringly obvious, it changes my life. It started for me the statement, I want to teach you something so cool that makes you cry. That one made me cry. Do you have a room tone tip like that?
No, I don't. Unfortunately, it's just going through all the B-roll and finding something you can lift from a pause between action or something like that. But in terms of room tone, no, it's just you've got to get something longer than a couple seconds because the audience will pick up on the loop. But I've never tried the reverse trick, so that'll be something I'll try if I ever get back into the audio realm.
I always get jazzed if there's something I'm able to teach you because I just think you're so goddamn smart to begin with. But I think that's why we hang out at our editors, right? I had one today. I had one today where somebody in the said they wanted some a solution for Premiere. I thought I gave a great answer, and somebody came in and mentioned 4 tools that I'd never looked at, and I'm sure it'll pop up on the next. I'm hoping it'll pop up on our next Star Wipes. Meanwhile, let's take a look here at
Persona 1138. You mentioned nice THX 1138 reference there. So room tone, and what were some of the others that people send a glom onto?
Gabo Taggart mentions here, I can always make sure your camera has sound recording on. So much easier to sync. And make sure there's silence before the slate, not after. When I work with audio only, it's difficult to find when the marker is done, and labeling the extra important for external audio, name them by scene. Man, you know, all of the things that were caused by 2-up format with cameras, you know, that dual record sound. It's just one of those pain points. And I got to tell you, when I look at people and they're trying to streamline their workflows, it's almost always the same. If they can plug in the camera and avoid dual sound, I want them to do it.
I partially agree. I'm always a fan of DAing or distribution amplifying, of DAing the output of the secondary sound device into the camera and then panning that hard left or hard right. So you have the camera mic as your safety and as a sync point. You then have the second track as the mux, right? The output of the sound devices, excuse me, not to name drop a company, but the secondary sound device. And then you have the source, which was recorded to whatever the secondary sound device is. So that way you have multiple points of not only sync, but of CYA in case something dies.
The one that I was taught like that early in my career was to bring in another side through an amp and pot it down 6 decibels or 10 decibels or so if you don't have a full-time sound guy riding the levels. And that way, if somebody laughs or something, you're able to have that much extra headroom. Although my new feeling, Michael, is everybody should just get rid of their recorders and only buy float recorders. Because as I understand it, float recording is the raw of audio. It doesn't matter what it's potted to. And that's just like the scariest thing to me.
That brings up another point. I'm not going to say where, but a lot of folks who are editing with NLEs, a lot of times aren't checking what their audio sample rate is at. And I find often that it'll be set to 44.1 when the recorder on set was set to 48K. So that can lead to render issues. That can lead to loss of quality. So you just want to make sure that all the sample rates and bit depths are the same.
Let's take a look at another one here. This one I love. This one I love from Wood and Bread. When you want to call cut, count to 7 in your head first.
I like that. And there's your room tone. There's your 6 seconds of room tone. That's great.
Splendid 1C. Check that all cameras are shooting the same frame rate and format. Don't live mix sound channels. Back up all cameras before handing it off to the editor. Copy set logs, provide transcripts for A-roll if available. I almost want to add in here, check the footage on set. Somebody recently was like looking for data retrieval because they didn't close something on a camera. They didn't check the camera. And, you know, it's in the territory of needing to get your insurance involved because your client's upset because they can't recreate that recording.
Right.
How about this one? Make sure your field crews get time for lunch. A happy crew goes a long way in making sure the work is great.
I agree with all these things for production. Unfortunately, there's usually a stark dividing line between production and post. And often if post tries to tell production what to do, there's a lot of, don't tell me what to do, or it's union. No disrespect to the unions, but that's not what I'm supposed to do as a union person. I have not been trained on that. So I think there gets to be a little butting of heads. So I think just like you do camera tests, there should always be a post test. And so all of this should be kind of knocked out first instead of trying to, change the engine at 30,000 feet.
I think that, is the standard line, especially when you're building it, is to test your workflow and test it from like literally a simulation of on set all the way through delivery. Ideally, with all the players in the room, all the voices, so they can see like, oh, because we were in a rush on set and we didn't name something, it's creating so much extra work in the post state. And I guess that's a lot of what's going on. One of the things that I still, for this day, my dream is that there would be some way on set to easily, regardless of camera, get metadata about the good take into post. Because when I'm in a rush, if I could sit back and I could just see the good takes, it would be killer. It would be killer.
Well, don't Blackmagic cameras have the ability to mark good take?
Yeah, some of them do and some of the Sonys do, but that essence, that metadata doesn't always reach its way into post. It's an afterthought. There's nothing on consumer cameras. Adobe for like a hot minute had something called Live Logger that could do some of this. And I feel like Intelligent Assistant that Phil Hodgetts is
Flipping Greg. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it Lumberjack? They've got something that does some of this. It's like 90% of the metadata is nice, but just that like good moment would be killer from on set. Hey, this sounds like you. Here is body pertain. Make sure cameras are running at the same rate. Make sure audio is the right rate. Make sure the color space is correct. It's wise to shoot at 4K and leave some breathing room on the margins. Yeah, I pretty much am seeing a lot of the same pieces here. Don't flip off the camera. When the post asks you to blank stop, yo-ho matey, thank you. These are really great items across the board. There's the constant beef with exFAT. Do you have anything you want to call attention here? Because I think this thread is just like should be shared with every production department ever.
I think this needs to be, and maybe my age is showing, this needs to be printed. This needs to be in a document. So someone who is sitting down to edit or sitting down to go out on location has a checklist. I think if this is saved to a Word doc and it's on your computer, okay, cool. Open that up and take a look. But at a training, at a facility I was just at last week, all of the editors all had a physical copy of this, of the things that they had to do and the procedures of things they did, printed out and on their desk. So they always had a reference point to go to.
You say, you think it's old school or whatever. I don't think it's old school at all, to have that checklist. And I'll go a step further. I just was working with a network. I was working with their editors, and they're showing me like what their workflow document was. I'm looking at one particular part, and I said, "Hey guys, you got to consider making a checklist." And the thing that goes with that checklist that I think is kind of, there's am I infantilizing people? Am I micromanaging, or am I preventing accidents? And I've read a couple books about just, the factors of not having enough sleep and the amount of mistakes. I forget which book this was from, but it was the story of the idea that the surgeons in the operating room, that everybody there stops before the surgery and takes a minute and goes, "Hi, I'm Dr. Greenberg. I'm working with this patient. Mr. Kammes here. He is this old. I'm working on his right leg to do this specific job." And every single person in that operating theater goes through that to prevent mistakes. Pilots, every single pilot, before they get behind the wheel of a plane and take off, go through their checklist without skipping, because in both situations, awful things happen. Why we can't be enlightened enough in post to see that checklist as a positive thing, I don't know. I don't think it's old school. I think it's the idea that our human mushy brains just aren't great at holding things,
To be fair, when I said old school, I thought because we were having a physical copy, it was that it's printed as opposed to being a digital version on your phone or something. I was going through the physical paper version. But I don't think at all that having a checklist is old school. And I get where you're coming from. That what you think I'm not adult or experienced enough to be able to remember these steps? No, it's because not everyone operates at 100% of the time, and it's a cover your ass.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there was some really great stuffs in this thread, and I think it's why it came onto both of our radars. With that, let's move to our second long form item here. Let's go ahead here and take a look at, and I think this one's a big one, Michael. To editors with kids, would you recommend your job to your children? I have a young kid, and looking back at my career, even with the highs and achievements, I don't think I'd recommend editing as a career. Listening to the same thing over and over, dealing with notes, dealing with egos, dealing with the effing NLE not working when you need it most. Edit, watch it again, export, defecate, mistake, edit, watch it again, export, watch it again. It's just maddening if you think about it. This was a big thread, partially for me, Michael, because I've got gray hair on my face and I've got young kids. My struggle, and I'd love to hear your call on it. My struggle is not about whether or not to go into this career, because especially if you're doing it in LA or New York, you're going to it with passion, with drive. It's more of the idea that I find woefully worried about myself, current generation, and forever forward, about the way the nature of work has changed. I've been doing this for 25 years. I did cut a little bit of tape, not a lot. I did cut a little bit of film, not a lot. And the people who were giants in the field with tape or giants with film, I know at least of one major editor. And I mean, when I say major, I'm talking, there's not a person in this audience who hasn't, and I don't want to out that person, hasn't seen one of this person's films, beloved films. He really didn't make the jump to Avid. And that's where he decided to retire. So, I think a bigger statement isn't about the transitory nature of this gig and freelance and where all that stuff goes. I think the bigger thing is whether or not we have jobs in 20 years in general. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, I have to preface this by saying I don't have children. I have a partner and a fur baby, and that's, I think, the only children that we're going to have. But the way and this person has been a very frequent poster over the past several months. Um, this is how the job is for them where they're currently working. If you looked at, let's say, how computers were in the mid 70s, right? We had punch cards, and then overnight we didn't. Industries are completely changing, and with the influencer culture and the fact that we don't have to be relegated to broadcast and theaters for content, the dynamic is changing. Different people are coming up, and they're inventing their own ways of the review and approve process or the editing process. So I think for us to say that this is how the industry is going to be when your kid in 15 years, whatever, decides to maybe try editing, I think that's presumptuous. And if my child decided to start trying to edit and ended up loving it, more power to them. You and I have a very close friend. We have Michael Horton, right? Michael Horton, who was an actor.
On Star Trek.
Horton,
on Star Trek, man.
On Star Trek. Murder, She Wrote. Rest in peace, Angela Lansbury, who passed away this week. Did commercials. Was on Mr. Belvedere. He was on a bunch of things. And he's been doing LACPUG, LA Creative Pro User Group, for over 20 years. And his son, Trevor, he'd bring to the meetings. Trevor has now grown up, gone to college, and is now an editor. Right. Yeah. And it's totally different than when Michael was different in the.
And so I think that's the same sense here. Is if my kids said they wanted to be an actor, I would say, yeah, make sure you can still feed yourself. I'm not saying you take because again, I wouldn't tell any. I think jobs that are the amount of weight around tip-based jobs, such waiting tables, that would be something I would lean my kid away from, just because of its the pain nature with it. But whether it would be, make sure you get your apprentice electrical stuff. Make sure you can find some other way to feed yourself. If they're passionate about it, that's what's at some level important. And that leads us into some of this discussion here. I'll start with Arnold, who goes, no way would I want my kid to go into film or TV. So many people want to get into it so they can experience the feelings of magic. Working in film is work. It isn't easy. Tough personalities, tougher schedules. Want money? Be a lawyer. Want to impact lives? Be a doctor. Be creative. Make your own art. And this is the part that's important to me, Michael, that's part of this discussion. For me, I'm cursed. I love it. The creativity, the collaboration, the problem solving. It's an ever-changing puzzle that keeps me coming back. I can't explain it. If I could, it would be a writer. And I think this is literally the idea to support it, with Mad King Soup weighing in right after it, that these jobs, these traditional jobs that we see as making tons of money, like a doctor, doctors walk out of college with at least $250,000 of debt, and then also have crazy malpractice insurance costs. So, I kind of look at this and I go, wow, yes and no along those lines.
You can find bad points about any career. Any career is going to have a downside.
What about king? Being a king?
That's a lot of responsibility.
I also would say, that a lot of the times, prior to right now, the way you would get deposed, you'd probably be beheaded, so.
I think there's editors that, or I should say, I know there's editors who are working in an environment where they're appreciated. They have a good rapport with the other creatives on staff, if it's a staff position. Obviously, when you're freelance, you're going to be working with a whole host of different people, and some people are going to be jerks and some aren't. Again, I have to pull the reins back because I don't have children. But I can't, I guess in a logical sense, I can't ever say, I can't believe I would tell my child or a child not to do something they find passionate or want to do. And if you want to do that, because I have experience, I'll tell you where the bodies are buried. I'll tell you what the bad parts are. So you're at least intellectually know it. It's like telling someone, don't touch the stove, it's hot. They still have to touch it to understand what that means. So I would share with them and hope that that would prep them. So when they do touch the stove and get burned, they were at least prepared.
I think that's right there. The biggest struggle is the idea that people go in with rose colored glasses and they don't necessarily know the drawbacks. And interestingly, here, Millerski goes, I'm sure if I had a kid, I'd rather not look him in the eye and see the same cowardice I see when I take a glimpse of my own face in the mirror. And then just as equally, right down from that, Code 603 goes, absolutely. I want him to find his own thing, but I love editing. Even on its worst days, it's better than anything else I could be doing. And I feel like that's really the balance of this thread is, and it's again, I almost wish in the same way that I wish everybody in production were to read the prior long cut, I'd like every film school student to read this thread, because this is probably the most honest thread I've ever professionally seen about the drawbacks of this job, whether it's the amount of hours you work, about childish personalities, and just fear in general of being employed. And I think we've, that's like, what is it? Slash thread right there. I'm just looking to see if there are any other things that, I like this one. Absolutely not. I only want good things for my children. Well, you're pointing out the worst forms of it. Yes, if I hate my kids or I want them to hate me. No, I tell them work in a field based on data and hard facts. I'm confused why you're an editor, says I glad hatter, if you don't like it.
Oh, we have a Bob Zellen sighting.
We have a Bob Zellen sighting. Yeah. Your kid should do whatever he or she wants. Did you want to do what your father did? I got into this business thinking it'd be glamorous or cool. Girls would want me. This didn't happen. I've been into all aspects of the industry, audio, touring, film production, video, now post-production, big rap parties. But when you're 16 or 17, you think that's what you want. You want to be like Bieber, Adam Levine, Brad Pitt. That's the fantasy. If you stick with it, it comes down to money, elevator repair, maintenance contracts. No elevator rebuild is less than $200,000. Low voltage cabling, not wiring up a TV studio. Again, try to tell a 16 to 17-year-old you should run low voltage cable when you grow up. Nobody would agree to this, not me. Man, for all the flack we give around Zellen, this is like one of the best statements I have seen about the honesty of money versus glamour.
Mm-hmm. No, I'd agree.
Yeah. And on that, I'm just looking to see if there are any other parts, but I feel like here, there's the question of robots taking our jobs from Mad King Soup. There's Hot Dog Bomb saying, I have a child in a second on the way. I want them to develop a skill set. I got to see, I don't feel like being an editor is some sort of albatross around my neck. Do what you love. I probably got to sort this by controversial as our wrap here, Michael. So I think I'm going to do that. So let's see here. I'm going to go back and say, don't sort it by top. Let's see what the most controversial content. There you go. There you go.
There's all the AI fear.
If you think this job's around in 30 years, you haven't been keeping up on where AIs are today. Film production will still be around. People want still real actors and sets, but that might be in lower demand. If anything, you will be a creative director instructing the AI to try recurring a scene this way or that way, or find a different music.
Your job is not going to be taken by robots in 20 years, folks. It's gonna make the monkey work you do easier, while you allegedly will have more time to create. You won't have more time to create because budgets or time frames will be compressed. But the creative part will not be lost to robots. Relax, take a breath.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the constant fear. There's a whole secondary discussion that happened this week on Reddit about autonomous driving, and it's still not here yet. And it's, whether Uber's long life, waiting for that to happen or not. I think that's a phenomenal way to end this thread. And that's going to bring us, to a moment into shortcuts.
Are we calling it shortcuts or short form?
Oh, I think
you like shortcuts, but I use the term short form because we have long form. I don't think we sound like we have a unified front. I like the short form, long form. It goes to the kind of content that editors will cut, whether it's long or short. Shortcuts tends to be out there. It doesn't really relate to long form because there's no long cuts. Isn't really a phrase.
We can make it a phrase.
Shortcuts
we can
also
make it a phrase. Hey, how about
we could make it a thing.
How about for anybody out there who's watching this segment, we would love for you to weigh in on what the hell we should call this segment. And that way, Michael, that way we're doing more engagement of the audience. But at the end of the day, we'll end up calling it short form. Because you're right.
Yeah, that's right. You don't piss off the cook. You don't piss off the person who's cutting your hair. And Jeff is my barber.
Wow. No. We're going to call it short form. I'm so joyous to do this with you. So here we go. Cool. Editors. How do you make background sound? Workshop, hammer hitting, chainsaw, doors opening, people walking, sitting nicely in the background of your edits by It's Gonna Be Worth It.
I will, as a former post-sound person, I'll give you some quick things that I think will help quite a bit. Don't think of audio as mono or stereo. Think of the sound field, right? When you have speakers in front of you, you're hearing the, I don't want to say Phil Spector wall of sound, but you have a whole sound field. And by putting different effects in different pockets, right? Not just panned hard left and right, but maybe panned 30% each way. You can kind of notch out where the sound effects sit in relation to music, which is usually panned completely left, completely right, and then dialogue, which is panned dead center. So finding little pockets where those sound effects can fit in. Also, be sure to use compression on those. So you're not having wide dynamic range on sound effects because then they can get lost as they get low. So often having a compressor on those effects can help. Also, when someone's talking, notch down the effects when there's dialogue, so you're not stepping over that, and then maybe raise them up a little bit when there's some silence. Now, compression can do that, but we also have the auto ducking that we have in a lot of NLEs. I'm still a fan of doing it manually, but I think those tips will certainly help.
I think ducking versus auto ducking versus manually is just a question of time and efficiency. If you've got the time, it's almost always better to do it by hand. That's what makes it craft. But yeah, it's that combination of EQ, compression, and reverb, as well as where to put it into the spatial field. With kind of the golden rule as you listen to it is if you're calling a lot of attention to it, you failed. You failed.
Yeah, if you do your job right, no one is supposed to know you've been there.
Which is one of those maxims about editing. Speaking of that, unwritten rules in documentary editing by Hambone Bowler. I'm editing a Talking Heads doc. I got 2 interviews back to back that are great. The B-roll goes with what they're saying. The way it's unfolding, the first guy makes sense to show him at the end of his soundbite. Second guy makes sense to show him at the beginning. Here we go, Michael. They're both on frame right, facing slightly left, same interview position. Environment's different. First guy's dark with the graffiti. Second guy's bright and colored. Different focal lengths. Is a bad decision to cut these together.
Let's before we answer this, let's make sure we're discussing unwritten rules versus stylistic choices, right? Because there's certainly we've both seen documentaries where that's a interesting way of filming someone. We're not talking about that.
Well,
we're talking about once a stylistic is chosen.
I teach.
What are some rules?
I teach a documentary class, and I'm going to give you my sentence that gets the most has the most bit of controversy, which is if you really understand the topic that you're doing your documentary about, that you're going to work on, whether it's a short man or woman in the street interview or a serious topical subject, you probably have a pretty good clue about what people already think about that, the experts you're going to. Could you script out a documentary beforehand? And I always get pushed back. Well, we won't discover those nice moments. I'm like, you're absolutely right. You're going to discover those nice moments. But I want you to walk in with a vision. And if it challenges your vision, you're still walking in with a vision and an opinion. If you don't have that vision in a doc, you maybe need to develop what that vision is for what the doc should be, down to where people are positioned on camera, down to stylistic choices. And when you and I were doing our real pre-show, you brought up a documentary which I haven't seen, but please talk about the stylistic choice here. This is the panning up from.
Yeah, this was a documentary on the band Aerosmith, and I think this was probably done in the 90s, I'm guessing, maybe early 2000s. And it would start with a cut. Everyone was interviewed on a white background. All of them were in like stage outfits. And a lot of times it would start with the camera on the foot of the person being interviewed and then would raise up. So it wasn't tilted up when it got to their face. The whole camera was moving. And sometimes it would start like on the side of their face and then come over. And I get that they were trying to do it stylistically, but it got me looking at their shoes and their pants and the bandanas as opposed to what analogy is Steven Tyler going to make now. So I think sometimes stylistically can detract from the content. But at least in that documentary, at least they were consistent.
That's that sort of golden rule is that if you do something 3 times in a row, it's an artistic style choice, not an accident. In this thread, by the way, and it's worth calling out, Hungry Like the Wolf, 99, mentions this idea that if it was shot in 4K, consider a 1080 deliverable so you can reframe. And man, that's like the new mantra for the last 5 or 6 years. And Michael, one of the things that I've managed to do with it, I did it for starting with a shoot for Max. I ended up like taking my one angle, making 4 angles from it, and running it like a multicam, just to break up the shot pattern. Yeah,
that's exactly what I do for 5 things. In fact, I shoot 4K DCI just so I have a little bit more play on the sides, in addition to punching in.
Do you
just for a little bit more?
Do you throw a mask at the top and bottom, just a little black bars, so you can keep that DCI aperture throughout the end?
No. Nice. I'm still 16:9. But no, I don't do things to make it look more cinematic, which is just hysterical. Everything I see online, which is how to make your edit more cinematic. Throw on some bars. Yeah, that's cinema.
Absolutely. I just always laugh because I are you doing that on purpose or not? And you're saying no, I'm doing it for the extra
nope,
feel.
Just for pixels.
That's beautiful. Just so the unwritten rule I think that both of us are kind of leaning into is to have a real cogent idea before you shoot. In fact, I worked with a group that
consistency.
Yeah, I worked with a group that shot everything on a green screen, Michael. And then only in post did they have the decision with the client that they didn't know what to put behind people. So they ended up putting up like just a moving thing of the company's logo. And I'm like, man, this costs you so much time to shoot, light, and finish. You could have had all that money back.
Mm-hmm. And they agreed. They just decided to put a moving logo behind the
just
person.
A slow moving thing of their corporate name behind. Not just one. It was Michael. It was a 20 minutes of documentary, and every time we cut to a human being.
Wow, it's like they keep on making more and more mistakes.
Absolutely.
The dominoes just keep. That's an odd creative choice. But anyway.
All right, let's go over here to this. And I love this one from Wordbird89. Feeling embarrassed about an awkward conversation with a client about my rate for a new project. How can I feel more confident about what I'm charging? And the TLDR, I attempted to bump my rate between projects with a new client after realizing I put more work in than just the standard post stuff. Client pushed back and I folded, feeling embarrassed about trying to raise my rate. How can I learn to confidently justify my rate? I love this story because this is somebody doing that thing where they go, hey, I quoted you, I worked my butt off. I'm not letting you in on that. I'm not grandfathering rates. This is a course correction here. And the client said, well, oh no, this next one's going to be easier. My thought on this, Michael, was to fold. And my thing almost universally is when I have to fold, when I can't take a price in a direction, is to ask for something else. So when I talk to people who are volunteering their work or working for a cut rate as the editor, ask for a producer credit, ask for a story credit, ask for something to compensate you. For WordBird here, I would have said, tell you what, if it's in line with the time estimate, we do it at this rate, at the pre-existing rate, and you walk off easier. But if you're wrong, at this spot in our statement of work, you have to start paying me a fuller hourly rate. So if I'm right, you win. If you're right, you win. But if I'm right, I'm not charging you what my suggestion is. I'm charging my suggestion plus. What do you think about that?
That's really tough, and I really feel for WordBird, because this is a hard position to be in. I normally don't feel like I need to justify my rate, right? This is my rate, and if they're gonna push back on it, then there's something bigger there, right? I understand in this solution, or I'm sorry, in this scenario, that it's the same client, so that becomes a little bit more difficult in terms of politics. But I think what you said is spot on. I think the issue there is making it easy for the end client to understand what you're proposing, instead of just making it so convoluted that it becomes a pain in the ass to work with.
100%. 100%. And Tiki Thunder often has got great stuff. Welcome to the game. It's good to recognize it as such. You do great work for clients. Negotiating rates is about being that every real pro shouldn't be an emotional thing at all. The only way you get over your uncomfortableness is put yourself out there and do it. If you never raise your rates, you won't be in the business long, but you get better at this with practice. Yeah,
and I like the end phrase that Tiki Thunder has, which is, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, but you'll get better at it with practice. And I hate saying, well, in this situation, take it on the chin and soldier through, because with the next one, you'll have learned and you'll be able to charge more. But I think sometimes there has to be, is this a battle or the war? And can I lose a battle but still win the war?
You're going to lose. You're going to lose some of the battles.
Yeah,
it's better to lose the battle and learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Great.
And that brings us to a fun Frustration Friday post. It's really, I wasn't that serious about this post, except for this part from Kitschy Guy, which is, you ever use compressor back in the day? It didn't use enough cores. It was taking too long. Michael, this is my,
what I love about this?
It's my love of qmaster that's here. Yeah. Yes, sir.
What I love about this is, and I have to assume Kitschy Guy is doing this from memory, is, the tech he's talking about isn't ancient, right? We're talking 10, 15 years, right, ago. But the fact that Kitschy Guy remembers all of this blows me away, because, I can't, some things I just have to vacate from my memory. And the fact that Kitschy Guy remembers this blows me away.
I drink less nowadays, but I maybe could use some of that mind eraser for those things. I have to tell you, some of these sort of problems, Michael, end up being so burned into my brain. It's like a level of trauma. And I don't want to minimize people who go through the real trauma in life, but this idea that you go and something's going to take forever, and this is what Kitschy Guy points out, one of the client nodes crashed. By the way, qmaster was a distributed rendering engine that Apple, because they bought Shake, integrated into their compressor tool. And on paper, it looks like such a great idea. We're going to have every computer, you're going to have all the Macs in your office able to sit back and just help out a little bit in the compression. It'll be faster. Of course, if one of the nodes crashed, the compression job never happens. It doesn't give you warnings. That was the real pain point. This is just one of these things, one of these little tools, and Sten's got in there another one of the great mod team, along with Kitschy Guy. If you didn't know, Kitschy is one of our mods. This is amazing, and I hope it doesn't get lost in the weekly thread. I didn't bring it up because of that, but it was just this idea that qmaster was such a part of every Apple Final Cut install. People barely used it, and it could have so much ramifications around qmaster to give you pain. That's why I had to bring it up. Maybe it was nostalgia for me. Which brings me to,
I'm sure there's plenty of folks here that come from that time period.
I
So I'm sure it's a stroll or a stumble down memory lane.
absolutely. Uh, we just did tech. Let's get back to rates. What are all the things what are all the things you involve when deciding your rate? Ask Financial Donut 11. Now, I got to say right there, with a name like Financial Donut, I would expect them to have like this whole rate thing down to a P. Film editor, nails it. How much does a computer cost? How often would I need to change it? Dock, second monitors. What does subscriptions do I need to pay? How much electricity? How much am I paying in rent? How many days will I actually be working? How much would you pay yourself at minimum per month to be reasonably okay with this insane lifestyle? And Michael, right there, that's the number one rate item. I think we've pushed people over in general to the BCPC survey. We push people to kind of learn to know their own markets because everything they're doing is so hyper local. But man, if you're looking at this and you're not having a minimum reasonably okay for all this extra weight in your life, you either raise your rates or you should find some other way to work. Because man, you got to pay taxes on all this. Your budget needs to cover it. This is like such a golden post from Film Editor. And go ahead, Michael.
You know what I think is great is, as a career, editors follow their gut, right? It feels good to cut at this point in time. It feels good to have this shot. And I think that comes with having not just experience, but data points, right? I've done this in the past, this worked. I've done this in the past, this didn't work. So by getting data points on what's the minimum I would work for, what do I have to pay in taxes, what do I have to pay for this, what do I have to pay for software, what do I pay for hardware, I would also go even further and say, how much would a facility charge per hour? And then, are you charging more than that? If you're charging more than that, you have to revisit your rates, right? Because there's a lot more at play with someone who is for a facility. So I think having that as a data point and not just you personally, I think that can help determine where you fit in between those two.
I'm going to throw in one more Zellen alert here. Here's how I determined my rate. I started in New York, charging nothing from 78 to 99. I slowly increased my rate to a lot of money. I moved to Florida in 99. I went to a couple meetings. People looked at me when I told them my rate. They thought I was crazy. After a few meetings, you figure out what people in your area are willing to pay. Once you're working, you can resolicit them and say, hey, I'd like to work with you. Here's my rate. I love this post. I love this piece from Bob on this, with that just exception. And it's not an exception. I find that there is this, and maybe it's because of the internet itself and the democratization of communication. There's this desire to try and short circuit, to try and shortcut. Just tell me what I should be charging. Just tell me where that tutorial is so I can do that thing I want to do. I think that there is a truth to, well, here's a starting, but the window is large. Whether it's tutorial or whether it's learning to charge your rates or learning how to respect yourself in this field. I think all three of those, you pay a price. And anytime you try and you see, I can't say short forms here. Anytime you short form that, anytime you shortcut it, you end up getting into trouble. I think it's a wonderful post, though. And I think there's just a lot of great thoughts here about anybody getting into this industry or being in this industry for a while.
Our editors also has a wiki on rates, correct?
We have a wiki post on rates that we point anybody who goes, what should I charge to? That links to the BCPC survey. But now that I say it, I'm right now clicking save this because I think this is like must reading. And wildly, Michael, there have been like 3 in here that I almost felt that I should add to the wiki because there's such great posts.
Agreed.
But that's kind of why we have these discussions. So with that, what are some good editing YouTube channels by deleted? Michael, why did they delete? Why did they delete?
I don't get that because I search for answers online all the time, and I want context. and deleting your question just deprives other people searching in the future of the question that you spawned.
I think the question still ends up live. I think they may have. Well, you might be right. I don't know. It's a shame because again, this is like a great resource to just break down and add to the wiki. Like, wow. With the number one answer here, I have to point out some Yahoo AV Guru 1 mentioning this guy edits. Sven is great. Sven is great. And interestingly, Orbital Probe Cannon says, I found him a little bit amateur. And this line here, it's hard to know who to trust on YouTube. I remember watching a video once where a guy recommended using YouTube itself as their main backup and archival program, archival platform, and I almost had an aneurysm. Yeah.
It's what are they? Opinions are like a-holes. Everyone has one, and there's no filtering on YouTube, so everyone is a self-proclaimed expert. And unfortunately, there is not a grading methodology at this point to determine the Ish from Shinola, one of my favorite movies. Love that movie. And because there are the issues with downvotes, YouTube has now taken away the count of downvotes, right? So unfortunately, there's no way to tell who knows their stuff on YouTube, unless you want to go by their subscriber count, which is I'm totally digressing at this point. But Sven is much more than amateur. He's great, and I can't recommend his channel.
The struggle I have, and I'll mention that Mike Quick mentions you have your Mercedes channel. Hiller Smith for YouTube editors, video revealed by Red Hot Chili Ad Peppers. Voodoomer says, Peter McKinnon joking, this guy edits great. Pyro DCZ. With all of these, I'm going to say one item, which is the people who are doing analyses of other people's edits have one major flaw. They don't know what the person was working with. And that's kind of the hardest part of that evaluation is when I go and I think about Lawrence of Arabia. And I've met Ann Coates before she passed. We actually had her in an editor's retreat. I had a couple meals with her. She had amazing stories. But really, she and her assistants are the only people who know what she had to start with. And maybe the less professional productions have better editors because they've got wilder stuff that they have to incorporate, and the really serious professional productions, everything is shot great to begin with, making it a lot easier. I don't know, man. That's what makes go ahead.
There's something here that I disagree with quite a bit. Anyone working consistently in movies, TV doesn't have enough time to run a YouTube channel. That's complete BS. One of the best editors that I've worked with in recent history is Zack Arnold.
Oh, Zack.
Right?
Zack's
Arnold.
Amazing. Zack, formerly Fitness and Post, now Optimize Me. Let's make sure those get linked.
Optimize yourself.
Optimize yourself. Thank you.
Optimize yourself. But Cobra Kai, Burn Notice, Empire, fantastic things. And while he was doing Cobra Kai, multiple seasons, he also was running Optimize Yourself, which has a massive podcast following. The YouTube channel, not so much, but for the sake of discussion on this, the podcast can be just as time consuming as a YouTube channel. What he's done is he's brought on people who are smart, intelligent, and can offload all the things that have to be done. I call it monkey work, but all the stuff that has to be done aside from just hitting record and recording that content. So I think Set Life said this thinking is outdated, and I think that's completely right. There used to be that old phrase, those who can do, those who don't teach. And I think that has gone by the wayside over the past.
I have to do this because my wife's a high school teacher. Those who can't teach administrate, right? That's just for your management. If you've never heard that one before. No, the hardest part, I think, for professional working editors isn't having a voice in a spot like this. I think it's two items: having enough to say without it becoming film analysis, and then being allowed to talk in public about their pieces, because Man, if you're an editor and you say negative things about other talent in any recordable form, you're up. And there it is. I'm going to break that seal. You're up shit's creek, man. Nobody's going to want to work with you. And that's why we have these crazy NDAs that occur in the industry, whether or not they're enforceable. I know that there are some really heavy professional people who read editors, because I occasionally get an email from somebody I know who's working on like a Marvel film and goes, yeah, I check it out on occasion, sometimes more, depends on how busy I am. This is the struggle, is how to educate and continue educating if you came from a film background, or self-educate if you're just trying to get better at this gig. And I think this is just full of great things for people to watch. Too many hours in a day.
One last thing before we move on. And I'm going to butcher their name, but Hellier Smith for YouTube editors. I actually met Hellier Smith 3 weeks ago at LACPUG. It was his first meeting that he attended as LACPUG came back from hiatus during the pandemic, and he worked with Mr. Beast and a bunch of other larger YouTube channels. So his stuff is fantastic. And also I see Video Revealed. I think Video Revealed, that's Colin, right? Formerly of Adobe many years ago.
Oh yeah, that's Colin Smith. I believe you're correct.
Yeah.
And
so I recommend going into this and checking out. There's a lot of names listed in here, and these names run the gamut between folks who've been doing traditional film and television, and then some of the kind of newer form.
So I'll say two things. It wouldn't be a bad thing to watch 10 hours of content from variety pieces here. And maybe, there's a great follow-up that comes from this, Michael, to go, okay, but which one are like the three most from this guy edits? What are the three best episodes to watch? And here for the last of our short form is F Avid Titler Plus. Cherry Blossom Girl says, I'm sure this has been posted before. How could it possibly not have been? It can go F right off. Man, Avid, who gets so many things right about their professional workflows. How did they let this into their software? They know. And it's been a black eye for a while. They have someone new running the program, running the group that's handling this. And actually, and we'll ask Rachel to put a link in here, is that there is a link from Avid. Avid actually posted about this on Facebook via Chris and on the Avid forum about, yes, we know the Titler Plus has issues. You'll begin to see updates and fixes starting now, which was 2022.4, so several months ago. And I was speaking with Chris yesterday, actually, and more changes will be coming in 2022.10. And as you'll see in the Reddit post that we'll link to, there have been improvements. Not even inconsequential. There have been like 80 or so fixes and improvements. And I think this is, from the editor's chair, the hardest thing to see is we don't really see the bug list of what these companies have as, yes, we've acknowledged this is a bug, it's a recreatable bug. And the other thing we don't see is we often don't get to see, and I'm not calling out particular company names, we don't see deep notes about what they did fix. Avid gloriously publishes this on a regular basis, but most people don't actually go read those notes.
And I'm not trying being an apologist for Avid. Obviously, this is something I think that should have been done sooner. Just like M1 native M1 support, right? That still isn't out yet. But Avid has always had to chase the things that Apple does, as does every other manufacturer. And it looks like they're on the right track to getting Titler to where it needs to be, and not just languishing as to what it was.
I'm going to do a call out here, Michael, that you may not have known. I'm like 99.9. I'm sure it is. In fact, now that I look at it, take a look at this. From Mayo. That would be John Amayo.
Jonathan Amayo.
Yes, worst feature that Avid's released in the last decade, completely incompatible with previous titles or software plugins. horrible user interface. It makes me want to use Photoshop or any other application to do my titles with the postmark. Say, that's what I do. I do it all in After Effects. I haven't even bothered to attempt to do titles directly in Avid or Premiere in years. And John talks about his pedigree. John, who literally was the head of Avid's ACSR program for years. Smart guy, just at every level. Glad to see you reading this. Who knows if you'll hear about this, John? I hope so. Johnny Ammo. The thing I think across the board is something like this gets by a group like Avid because an engineer goes and says, yep, it works. And some parts of the tools just don't get the same battle testing. And I'll ask that really key killer question, Michael, aside from like slates, should we ever really be using Avid's title? This is a company that's had no less than 6 or 7 title tools in their products.
Yeah, I get that if you're working on not independent projects, but if you're not doing feature film and television workflow where the titles are going to be done elsewhere anyway, but for folks who are using Avid and doing it all-in-one in the box, you do need the title. I mean, it's something that does need.
That's why people are using Subcap. That's why they're using Subcap.
Right.
I'm going to squeeze one more in against your better wishes here, but one more. Scott Simmons and myself of Pro Video Coalition had a discussion, a poll question, do you own Resolve? And I just thought these numbers were interesting. 88 out of about 250 owns the free version. 55 of them got it with a hardware purchase. 60 of them paid for it for a particular feature. And 40 of them don't use it. I think it's a real interesting split. And the reason that I proposed this, Scott, is we had a conversation with how many people are actually using it, have downloaded it. And the only discussion there, Michael, was that we can't depend on a group like Blackmagic to tell us what percentages of the population use the tool, pay for the tool. I think while this is professionally skewed, it's kind of a neat idea here that I'm going to say 20, 25% of the users out there are actually using or paying for the software. And again, it skews professional.
And that's impressive.
It's very impressive.
That's impressive. Yeah. I expect it to be 10%. Right, because they're getting most of what they need through the free version. But I guess Blackmagic has done a really good siphoning of features or segregation of features to kind of influence people to
they've put stuff behind the paywall without it being obnoxious in most cases. Most cases, I'm trying to think, things like noise reduction, 10-bit H.264 decoding. I love the fact that they make it so accessible and so easy to use along those lines, at least as far as self-training. And I think we're finished with our short forms here, which is going to bring us to...
That came on twice.
It does. It does. I changed the background. That's why. It changed the background. Okay. And when I change the background, it rolls that back in because we need to do...
Sorry, Rachel.
No, we don't. No, we don't. We're going to go for FMK here, man. And our FMK this week is water. Your choice of caffeinated beverage or alcohol. And when I threw this one at you, because I threw it to you as a curveball about an hour ago, you were like, I might need to pause. No. And if you want, I'll go first. With the rule being, we got to do F, we got to do M, we got to do K in that order. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yes, go first. Go first, Jeff.
I'm going to definitely... Wow, this one is going to be controversial for me. I'm going to F caffeine. I am seriously caffeinated. It is legit. This is it's about a 1:21 in the afternoon. I'm on cup number 3. And the moment we're done, I'm going to be making my 4th cup of the day, and I'll have one more before we're done. I'm going to marry water. I had a kidney stone, my friend. I had a kidney stone from all the Coca-Cola I was drinking, and I was drinking a lot of it in my 20s. My parents had it, and I have to tell you, there is nothing like a kidney stone to change behavior. There's nothing like pain to change behavior, which means, sadly, with regrets, crying regrets as somebody who really likes Redbreast 12-year that Bob Zellin owes me, if not a drink, a bottle of, I'm going to tell you that alcohol is what I'd kill, and that's going to be pretty controversial. Your turn.
Do you remember what you gave me for my wedding?
bottle of Redbreast?
No, Lefroy.
Lefroy. Oh God. Yes. Yeah. Have you? I hope you've drank that bottle by this point.
Oh, yes. Yes, that was a great gift.
Thank you. No, it was a joy. It's good whiskey. You know. Your turn.
So I'm gonna F alcohol, because effing is fun and alcohol is fun. And I know that I should have I shouldn't have any vices, and I am not reliant on alcohol. I'm not reliant on alcohol. I like the alcohol. I like the taste. I like the feeling. I like the socialness that goes with it. I like it being a part of my existence.
I'm so with you. I'm so with you. But I'm dying to hear what you're gonna. I'm dying to hear what you kill. Keep going.
So that's F alcohol. I'm gonna marry water, because water is stable. Water is consistent. Water is something that is always going to be there.
Right, and especially if you're doing a lot of,
except here in California. I have to pay more for it, but there's always going to be water.
But you figure, like, if you're drinking alcohol, like the rule is once you break that seal, you want to drink a glass of water for each glass of alcohol, whatever kind you. If you didn't,
which I do, I've started to do that, which is a glass of an intoxicant, and then water, and then another glass of intoxicant, which means I'll be killing caffeine. I've never been I need a cup of coffee in the morning. It was always I'm going to the break room, and that's where everyone is in the morning, so I might as well just have coffee. Kate, my wife, drinks tea like it's going out of style. So in the morning I have tea with her. But if I were to eliminate that, I think my body would become accustomed to it. And just like soda, which I eliminated decades ago, I would learn to live without it.
I got to throw two in real quick here for you, which is I didn't drink coffee. I drank caffeine, like in a soda form, but I didn't drink coffee till I had kids, and just needed to be like functional. And then I lost a bunch of weight, and part of it was through intermittent fasting, and coffee is just a real nice cornerstone of that. Real nice cornerstone. So I think that was a fun FMK. Of course, we would love to hear your comments. We would love to hear what you think we should cover for the next time. And with that, we're going to come up with our close. And we're back. Michael, this is episode 6. We're about to put it on a wrap. As always, where can people find you out there?
You can find me at 5thingsseries.com, which will drop next week. I'm committing to it. The episode is done. I'm waiting for feedback.
Oh, yeah, that's my fault. Yeah. That's my fault.
Waiting for feedback on the episode, but that should be out next week. So 5thingsseries.com. You can also catch me at michaelkammes.com. And you can catch me on the Reddits at AvidGuru1. And as a side note, I should have some news probably by the time this airs.
Don't you do it. Don't you do it. It'll be for next time.
No, I'm not going to say it now.
Don't say any of it.
But I should have some big news. No.
Just hold it off until signatures happen. And with that, my name is Jeff Greenberg. I am Film Geek on all the social networks except for Reddit, where I'm Greenysmac. I'm the lead editor, the person who, as I like to describe it, Michael, the person who's most likely to remove your post. But that's what keeps, the curated content pretty solid. We love doing this. We love doing Star Wipes. We, of course, want to tell you all the stupid...
And also our editor.
Oh, God.
There's no reason we need to keep that kind of, we can't talk about post. We're all in post. So we have Rachel, our editor. I'm waving at Rachel. Hopefully she's waving at the screen and then realizing that there's no camera on her, so no one can see her waving. But we love Rachel, and she is handling post for the...
Rachel, feel free to throw a title card on top of this, because neither Michael or I are confident enough to say your last name without screwing something up.
Hey, thought I'd pop in here for a second. I am Rachel, the editor. My name is Rachel Bastarache Bogan. There's a reason why Jeff and Michael didn't want to try and butcher it. You can find me online at Rachel Finder, pretty much everywhere. I'm most active on Twitter. See you around. Back to the edit.
So you just throw a title card right over this, block out our faces, because, you know, as editors ourselves, without you, this wouldn't happen. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Star Wipes. We hope you're enjoying our editors. Please share with your friends. Please share what will soon be a podcast before the end of this month. Thanks for watching. Hope you can join us next time. Bye, Michael.
Bye, Jeff.
And we're out.